6:30.
I'm with you.
Call,
There it is now.
Mine just 26:30.
Yep.
call this meeting of the Manchester by the Sea Select Board to order. Roll call, Jeff.
Yep.
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Anthony, yes.
John, yes.
The first item on the agenda, is public comment on non-agenda items. Is there anyone online?
There are people online. I don't see anyone raising their hand.
Okay. The next is the chairman's report. And today I have chairman's report of sorts, which is that we are going to ask to pass over two of the items that are on the agenda. The first one is the One Spirac Hill update, and I asked to have it put on the agenda because it's become a significant issue in town. And I wanted to get all of the town employees who are involved in regulating that kind of those activities together so that we could hear from them what they're doing, what the law actually is. I wanted everyone on the select board together to hear it from them in one place and in public. The owners have asked that they be present with their attorney, and their attorney is busy tonight, so we will reschedule this. The other thing that we are skipping over is the CST construction start time request. Discussing it with Mark Glovsky, who's the CST's attorney, and Greg, we felt that it would be better to wait until the planning board takes its position. The bylaw does not clearly allow us to override. There is no provision for us to override the bylaw. That's clear. Our town council has said that if it were a public safety issue, but haven't yet heard. So I have asked Mr. Glovsky to come back after the planning board has made its decision on what their start time will be and talk to us, explain to us why it is a public safety issue. If we can wait and discuss that. That, okay. We've listed the senior care update for 6:45. And if you want to go ahead and get ahead of schedule, or, because I think the people from the person from senior care is here.
My agenda says 6:30.
That's the Spirac Hill update.
Oh, it says, mine says senior care. I must have, maybe it's just the view I'm in. Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it's 6:45 here, but I.
Or should we start with the consent agenda? Are there any items that anyone would like to have removed from the consent agenda? Okay. In that case, you have a motion on the consent agenda.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. John,
Yes.
say yes.
Yes.
Brian?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. No, there's another minute.
All right.
We're all set.
9 more to go.
You want to review the action list?
We can do
Action items?
that. Yes, yes. I skipped that. You're right. That would be a good thing. Okay, is there anything
So there's something I wanted to bring up to see if there's any action the board wants to take. We haven't discussed it previously. The website for the town was recently updated and it looks very nice. You know, I sent Tiffany a note. I think it looks very nice. And the team has worked very hard to delete old content that shouldn't be there because that messes up the search if someone's trying to search for something. But it's really important that the content and the pages be maintained. So we have a select board page and you know, I guess my point is who is accountable for the content on that page? And I think somebody should be. And for the other boards as well, it's just not clear who owns it. Somebody's got to own responsibility for keeping it fresh. And so I wanted to ask Greg that question, or does the board need to get engaged at all in that?
So each department head should be responsible for their departmental page. Each committee, the chairperson or designated person of that committee should be responsible for letting Tiffany know what changes or updating should be done. So it's sort of an ongoing process. And but that's the structure.
So that's the structure. That's good. I think it may be good for you to discuss with Tiffany offline, what the process is for, kind of nudging people. I mean, from an
That's-
operational standpoint, I think the maintenance of the website needs to belong in town hall. And yes, the committees need to perhaps approve the content that goes out there or request content to go out there, but there's a cadence around keeping it fresh. Somebody's got to notice that something's old.
Yep.
That type of responsibility, I'm uncomfortable putting on volunteer boards because there's too many changes in players and it's been my experience, it should be run as a part of town operations type of thing. So,
Right, so it's a process of, you know, Tiffany, but Tiffany doesn't know what the committee wants on and all.
right, it's more of
So-
a, like a, you know, most places that I've been, they have like a schedule or a cadence around, you know, sending a note out to all the boards or departments, hey, it's
Right.
time to update your page, take a look.
Yeah.
There's a cadence around that, and I think otherwise, we've got some pretty old content out there.
Right.
And we might want to set a better example for the rest of the committees.
Is this information past your desk, or is it largely when Tiffany gets it, it goes? Unless perhaps she feels, well, maybe somebody else should look at this.
Right, typically, yes. the
Okay,
latter.
so I assume, all right, so most of it, she probably said, all right, this makes sense. Okay,
And perhaps after we have a town election or a round of, board changes,
Yeah.
Debbie could. Yeah, just have, remind her to give me a minute. Is there anything else that we want to add or change? Okay.
I can give a liaison update.
That would be
for,
great.
Yeah.
Everything's running smoothly. They're getting ready for, now the after school programs and, but as far as, they are now looking at CPC funding, so they're looking at some projects that, including the bathhouse at the beach. What cannot be done at Sweeney Park, the backside of the back of Sweeney Park, as far as new fields. Expanding that. And some other items there, but they're looking at that. Next, I think they're gonna tackle naming Pine Street fields. Because apparently Pine Street Field doesn't work. So there's some new signage at the I don't know if anyone's noticed it, it's at Masconomo and at the entrance to the Sweeney. And so, and just trying to maintain some uniformity with all of the signage for all the town fields go. So that's what all of a sudden brought the discussion to Pine Street. You're gonna name it Pine Street, put a sign up there, or you're gonna name it something else. So they'll tackle, they'll just not to tackle that next month.
Speaking of signage, Greg, where are we on implementing the signs that we approved as part of the wayfinding effort?
Yeah, I had that same question in my head the other day. So I need to follow.
Maybe that's something we could put on the action item list
I
too.
mentioned it to Sean Johnson. I
approved
was
that.
curious of what's going on with that.
Yeah, I need to check in. I lost track of where that is.
Jeff, do you know?
Well, a lot of us were at the planning board meeting last night, but the permit did pass for the Reed Park and Morris Pier. One of the things that did come up was, and actually Greg might want to talk about this, the ADUs, for the the new ADU law.
Right.
So there's an issue there, I guess.
Yes, so as part of the Affordable Housing Act that was passed, this past legislative session, it requires that ADUs under, I think it's 900 square feet, automatically, is a by right use. And that's across,
In a
Quick
single,
comment.
I think it's only in
in
a single,
yes, in single family resident zones.
Yeah.
It must be a by right use in all communities. So there's a concern that unless the town also has some policies around short-term rentals, that a lot of those, there may be a rush to build ADUs that serve that market, which would sort of defeat the purpose of ADUs helping with the housing issues that the Commonwealth has. So there are two ways to go about it. We could address it through zoning, but you can also address it through a general bylaw. We already have a general
I
bylaw
thought we already had one.
that regulates that regulates short-term rentals, but it's frankly very weak. It only captures rentals that are 6 days or less.
Okay,
So most people say, well, mine's available for 7 days or more, and thus we don't regulate that. So there was concern that the town take some action and update the general bylaw to better address the use of short-term rentals and how they can be done. In last night's meeting, I mentioned that the City of Gloucester just adopted pretty rigorous new bylaw, city ordinance to regulate short-term rentals. And I think it's worth a look at that as a model that we might draw from.
yeah, I fully support that. I was gonna bring that up as part of the, it's also an issue, I think, for the proposed MBTA zoning, if that goes forth, Manchester and other seaside towns, those extra units could be for, short-term rentals and Airbnbs instead of the housing
Right.
for full-time
It's a
residents.
similar
that we
issue.
want it to be, yes, the
Yes.
same issue, so I think that's a great idea. Or just updating the general bylaw instead of trying to put some new language in some other place unless.
I think problem's the timeline, right? I mean,
So the
It's
new
gotta be
law
done
takes
by
effect early February. So you're able to move forward a proposed general bylaw change a little faster than the zoning bylaw gets crafted and adopted. So we could put that on a bit of a fast track to get it ready for the November special town meeting.
I'm not sure that that's wise.
Well, let me ask a question. This board has approved Airbnbs, right?
Right, based on our current regulation. And again, we're only capturing those people who are using or renting for 6 days or less.
So there are other Airbnbs in town that are for 7 days or more, and we can, which
Currently, we don't have
we
a,
don't have the authority to
Ability,
regulate it.
There is a reason for that,
Okay.
or partial reason for that, is that there are still a few family compounds where there are several houses owned by the third or fourth generation,
yes,
and the people who use them are family members, but they pay for it.
Right.
And they're third cousins.
But I mean, there should be a way to enhance the law, modernize it, and
Right,
put some
we can
exceptions for
create-
specific
we
properties.
can
that-
create some exceptions that
Yeah.
capture that issue, I think.
Like a district, an overlay district or something like that. or-
Yeah, let's put this on for maybe the 2nd October, can we?
Well, I think we should take a look at it at the next meeting.
Yeah,
You're targeting the November meeting?
If you want to do it in November, then we
I
really,
think it would make the town residents feel better if we proactively try and address a very valid concern, because I think it is directly, it was brought up under the construct of the ADU discussion, but it's very
Right.
relevant to the MBTA zoning.
Right.
And I think it would make it more
Well,
likely.
My understanding is if we let it go past February, we can't go back, right? Isn't that the issue?
so if we wait until the annual town meeting in late April, so there'd be that period from early February until the annual town meeting, where someone could apply for an ADU, get it approved, and the
Get it
short-term
built.
rental uses would not apply to them.
They'd be grandfathered in under.
Okay, then yeah, I would really like to get
You know,
this.
I don't know how many applications you get in that 2.5 month period, but
I think we're going a little bit beyond
yes,
Agenda.
the agenda, I think.
Yeah,
this is a
no,
discussion
okay, yeah,
that should
that's-
be had.
fair enough. So we can put this on the next meeting.
Okay. Senior care update,
Yes. You want me to stay here? This is fine?
that's fine.
Okay, so, thank you for having me tonight. I'd like to thank Greg and the select board. My name is Scott Fredkin, I'm the CEO at Senior Care. And I'm kind of making the rounds in our 9 communities, meeting with the select boards as well as, upcoming the 2 city councils for Gloucester and Beverly, which we also cover. I had met with Greg earlier this year to kind of update Greg on some new programs and services that we have at Senior Care, which I'd like to highlight tonight. I can't do a full presentation or I'll be here forever. I did want to give a shout out to Nancy Hammond, the Council on Aging, the Senior Center. We collaborate with Nancy on different things. And I'd also like to give a shout out to the first responders here in Manchester. They've been very helpful in terms of reporting people in need that reside in this community, as well as working with us with some of our adult protective services cases as well. Representing Manchester on our board of directors is Jane Matrano. And I know Jane is pretty active here in town and a good advocate for seniors. So I had provided Greg with a sheet. I can't go through the whole thing of kind of statistics about what our activities are here in Manchester. And I gave Nancy stopped by the office last week, and I gave her, hopefully you all got packets, you got packets, all right, very good. With some of our brochures, certainly if you have any questions on anything that you see or read, please just reach out to me at any time. So new programs and services. One of the new programs that the Executive Office of Health and Human Services at the state level has implemented, not only for us through the Executive Office of Elder Affairs, but also Department of Developmental Services and Department of Mental Health. We're charged with identifying people who reside in nursing facilities I know you don't have one here in Manchester. In our catchment area, we have 6 nursing homes / rehabs. So they provided us with funding such that we have a full-time staff person who makes the rounds at the various nursing facilities, meets with the residents, and identifies folks that want to go back to their communities or want to return somewhere in the community. So we're tasked with trying to help them to do that. As you might imagine, the biggest challenge that we face, the biggest obstacle is affordable housing. That's clearly throughout Massachusetts, the biggest challenge. But I like to even though you don't have a nursing facility here in Manchester, I do like to let folks know that that is a new service that the agencies like us offer, because you may have a resident that goes to Blueberry Hill or Seacoast or wherever, or a resident there. So I wanted you to know about that. By the way, please stop me at any point that you may have questions. Senior Care is we're very into consumer-facing technology. We have received a couple of grants, one of which is from Addison Gilbert Buckley Hospital and another from Mass Broadband Institute. So we have a couple of staff who are dedicated to the technology needs of people that reside in the catchment area in Manchester. So for the hospital grant, what we're doing is we are utilizing virtual reality and targeting folks who are socially isolated, lonely, perhaps have depression and or anxiety. So we run small groups. We partner with a company called Rendeavor, who provides the headsets. So 4 people wear a headset, and we have a technology navigator who has a control panel. Each of the participants see the exact same thing. They can look all around. And what we have found is that people begin to engage with each other. The experiences that they can have are limitless. So somebody may want, there may be a common interest, which we try to find. Maybe, the group is into visiting some sort of museum in Europe, or they want to go see the home that they grew up in. We can bring them right in front of their house, and see their home. So that's something that we're doing. That's something certainly, anything I talk about here is available to your residents. Typically, we do the VR groups in housing or through the councils on aging. We have a partnership with a company out of Boston called Tech Goes Home. And what we do there is Tech Goes Home has a 10-session curriculum that one of our staff was trained in. And basically, it's Computer 101. So we hold groups throughout the area. It's 10 sessions. The nice thing is at the end of the session, the participants get a free Chromebook, and in some cases, 1 free year of internet service as well. If you have any residents who need help in the home, say with computer-related issues, or they can't get their printer working, or they have some sort of issue with cell phones, with their cell phone, our tech navigator can make an appointment with them, go to the home and try to help them out. Another thing that we have is something called Care Coach. Care Coach utilizes avatar technology. So we have deployed a lot of these, especially during and after the pandemic. Care Coach comes with a tablet that is pre-programmed. The tablet has an older adult can either choose a dog or a cat. It's a touch screen. The elder is in complete control of it. And behind that tablet, which they can move, bedroom, living room, wherever they want it to be, they can turn it on or off, is a 24/7 health coach. So there is not only verbal communication, but also text as well. So what we do with Care Coach is we program it based upon a person's needs. So a common one would be medication reminders. So at different points for the day, the Care Coach unit through the avatar will cue the older adult to take their medications. It might be reminders of upcoming physician appointments, or if someone has to take their weight on a daily basis or drink X amount of glasses of water, we can program it to do that. The other feature of it is a caregiver can video conference in. So the Care Coach tablet will ring and there can be face-to-face communication with a caregiver, friend, whoever. We have found that that's very helpful for long-distance caregivers who, want to check on mom. Maybe they're in California, but they want to make that daily call and eyeball mom and make sure everything's going well. What we did with Care Coach is we combined it with a company that we contract with called QMedic. And QMedic provides cellular personal emergency response systems. The old Lifeline units, I've fallen and I can't get up, press the button. Technology has increased significantly over the years, such that the person can leave the home. It used to be that you had to be in the home, you had to be within a certain range. I'm dating myself here, but you had to be in a certain range of the unit that was in the home in order for the button to transmit to the unit. That's no longer the case. So we offer that package of Care Coach and the personal emergency response system. So we also received a grant from the Executive Office of Elder Affairs relative to caregivers. So the needs of caregivers certainly increased during the pandemic, which exacerbated the needs of caregivers. And we've seen that continue post-pandemic. So the grant that we have, there are a couple things to know. One is that we have relationships with many places throughout the catchment area, just to name a few: Essex Greenbelt, bunch of different places that will have lunches for caregivers with a loved one with dementia. So places like the Depot Diner, the Village Pancake House, Beauport. It's really geared toward caregivers of dementia. Cabot Theater, we've shown movies like To Catch a Thief, Singing in the Rain. We get like 250 people that attend these. North Shore Music Theater will give us free tickets. Gloucester Stage Company, KPM Museum, the Zen Center in Hamilton. And we also offer, actually it's one of your residents, Abby, offers a evidence-based program called Savvy Caregiver. And it's a series of classes, 8 to 10 classes per session. And Abby follows the curriculum, which you have to do to the T. But it's geared to help caregivers of a loved one with dementia be better able to care for their loved one. The other part of that, which I want you to know about, is that we are able to offer scholarships to caregivers. I can't recall if we've done any here. I do not believe that we have, but in any event, we've done things like replace a stove of a person who had dementia, who had a gas stove, and it was unsafe for them, so we swapped it out, bought them an electric stove. Manicures, pedicures, gym memberships, whatever is going to, a day out of the house where we can get somebody to stay with their loved one, to give them a little bit of a break. The one thing I'll say about that is caregivers will never apply on their own behalf. So if you or someone, is this videotape? Go out to the community. So if a community member knows of someone who is in fact a caregiver, we have an application that they can fill out on behalf of that person. So why don't you two also know about that? Switching gears, home care programs. So we're charged by Elder Affairs with implementing the Massachusetts State Home Care Program. And there is a workforce shortage. And the workforce shortage is specific to homemakers, personal care workers, and home health aides. And it was bad before the pandemic, got worse during the pandemic, and it has continued to be bad, such that people often have to wait for services, which is horrible, right? Typically, when someone calls us, they're going to get our information in the referral department, who are going to take their information, demographics, etc. Usually when people call us, they're already in crisis, or maybe they should have called us 3 months ago, right? And oftentimes they have to wait for the initiation of those three services. We will try to put other things in the home to help relieve the stress and meet their basic needs, but in terms of waiting, like if you need a bath or you know, someone to assist with a bath or something like that, there's often a wait list. It's getting a little bit better. We contract out for those services, so we have 17 contracts with different agencies that offer personal care, homemakers, and home health aides. What I really want to talk about is a state home care program called the Consumer Directed Program. In this program, the older adult, the recipient of the care, can become an employer. So we contract statewide, a company called Tempest is used, which is the fiscal intermediary. So they take care of things like payroll, unemployment, workers' comp, end of the year taxes, etc. The first step is the older adult, the recipient of the care, or a surrogate if they don't want to do it, becomes an employer. At that point, once that is accomplished, that person can hire whoever they want. So they bypass the agencies that we contract with. And oftentimes it's a family member, it's a friend, it's a neighbor, and oftentimes it's somebody who's already helping them. That person is paid somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 an hour. But the older adult is in charge of everything. So they're in charge of training the person, hiring, firing, scheduling, making sure that they fill out their time sheet that goes to Tempest so that the person can be paid. So we've really ramped this up, especially during the pandemic. We continue to promote this as a solution for workforce shortage. And the workforce shortage is not unique to our 24 ASAPs throughout Massachusetts. We all have different names. We're all nonprofits. Hospitals are experiencing this, visiting nurse associations as well as hospitals, especially with nurses. So I don't know where people went after the pandemic, but they didn't go to work. So wanted you to know about that as an alternative to a traditional Massachusetts state home care program. We have a pet program. It's called Stay Pet Services, serving the animals you love. So we will do things like dog walking, or if someone is hospitalized, we can go into the home, feed the fish, take care of the bird, change the kitty litter, whatever might be needed. And we also will assist with transportation of the pet to the vet. And with low-income elders, we do have money that we receive from Meals on Wheels of America. So we can help to defray some of the costs of veterinary care as well. We're ramping up right now with Shine Counseling, right? October to December is open enrollment for Medicare. We have a Shine Counselor at Senior Care. We take appointments. During October to December, he'll be there 3 times a week. You simply call Senior Care and schedule an appointment and come to Senior Care and get that counseling. I have some stats. I'm not going to go over all of them, but for instance, Meals on Wheels. Everyone associates Senior Care with Meals on Wheels. So for the month of July, we delivered 601 meals to Manchester residents. We have 47 people enrolled in one of our state home care programs. And this is, we also have what's called the AmeriCorps Senior, which is another federal program. It's a volunteer-based program. And in FY24, there were 18 residents of Manchester who volunteered in some capacity at Senior Care, to the total of 1,068 hours of volunteer services. So kudos to your residents who have volunteered. We also have through this AmeriCorps Senior is volunteer medical transportation. So in FY24, there were 19 round trips provided to Manchester residents to get them to their doctor's appointment or specialist appointments, physical therapy, etc. I guess the last thing I'd like to tell you about is that, and Abby does this as well, is that we offer something called Dementia Friends. It's a 1 hour presentation on signs and symptoms of depression and kind of reframing depression in terms of how we think and we behave and, you know, act around folks who may have some sort of cognitive impairment. And we have provided this training, for instance, in Gloucester, the mayor wanted all of the citizen-facing staff to have this 1 hour presentation, so we did it for them. Rockport did all of their town employees as well as first responders. We've done first responders in Hamilton as well. So I wanted you to be aware that that's something that's also available to you folks should you want that. In our home care program, our various programs, in the month of July, we had 75 residents of Manchester that were currently, or at least in July, that we were servicing. I guess the best advice I can give to you is simply to call us. You know, the majority of our services are free. You know, we offer caregiver support groups via Zoom or in person on an ongoing basis. We've got that caregiver grant. The only program where there's a co-payment is being in the state home care program, unless you're on Mass Health, in which case there is no co-pay. But I will say in the state home care programs is that we're very generous, and it's based upon a person's income. The state sets the amounts, but we're very generous in terms of lowering the copay. And if the copay gets in the way of somebody accepting the help that they need, we'll go as far as just say, we'll just waive it, you know, because we know that they need the help. I'll close out here. I ask all the groups that I'm meeting with is, what do you folks see as the needs of older adults in your community?
Yeah, well, I can. I happen to be the interface person for Council on Aging and seniors here in town. And I'll say that their hot button right now is transportation, and I was curious. I have been in touch. I don't know who your transportation person was, but I spoke with him, I don't know, three months ago, find out what the story is. The challenge you have is the challenge that so many communities have. You need drivers.
Yes.
And he said, yeah, in the summer, it's not so bad. In the winter, it's tough because a lot of people go to Florida. At least your drivers do. So it's a problem, but you'll take people lots of places. And I know a couple of people who have used your service here. You say, I guess for fiscal year, you've done 19 round trips. I know at least one person who has been among those 19. We're always exploring new ways. And I know that your focus is all on healthcare. Okay, so, but that's the majority of the trips I think that demographic takes. And we're always looking for more choices and alternatives for transportation for our seniors. But in general, I'm impressed with the long list you've got here. That 601 did jump out at me for this Meals on Wheels. Is there a distinction between nutrition Meals on Wheels and just Meals on Wheels, or by definition, all of your meals are nutritious?
All of our meals are in fact nutritious, and we have very strict guidelines that the feds set.
I gotta believe
for the
that.
Meals on Wheels program, which you know is nationwide. So they have to be presented and cooked in a certain way, and there has to be, you know, balance between vitamins and minerals and protein and fats and carbohydrates. Our nutrition department handles all of that. So we do have a nutritionist on site on staff who also does home visits and can do nutrition counseling as well.
Well, it's 20 meals a day. I think that's pretty good. That's a lot of people who are taking advantage of that. So that's great. I know that Nancy and the Council on Aging, they think there's pretty high profile in terms of the programs they've got down there. It's advertised in their monthly newsletter, which is here, you're probably aware,
Yep.
et cetera. So it's good, and hopefully the programs continue to grow. You've got an awful lot of
Medical transportation drivers during the pandemic, they continued to bring people to essential appointments. And we honored them, you know, every year we have our annual celebration. Last week it was our 52nd. And during the pandemic, we actually honored them and the Council on Aging directors as well for the work that they did, during the height of the pandemic. These people were stars, driving people to appointments. We offered to get them plexiglass for the back of, the back seat.
Because it's their own cars.
Didn't want them their
Yeah.
own cars. And they were super committed to making sure people got the medical care that they needed.
Do you need anything from us?
No, I don't think so. Just spread the word. Any questions, anybody calls, like I said, the most important thing is just call us. Figuring out healthcare is so difficult. The other thing that we have to know is that we have something called options counseling, which is actually available to anybody 22 and over with a disability. So that's the one service that we offer for younger adults as well. And it's short term. The options counselor kind of lays out the options, and sort of empowers the person to make their own decision as to which way they want to go with respect to either themselves or someone that they're caring for.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Yes, great, Scott. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Greg, do you wanna just set
Set the stage for.
the stage for,
So our next topic is potential land conservation deal that Essex County Greenbelt has been championing, working hard on. We have Chris LaPointe here with us tonight, who's president of Essex Greenbelt and can walk us through some of the details. It involves lands in the eastern part of town, the Long Hill area. And some of the lands extend over into Gloucester, so it's lands that are both in Manchester and in Gloucester. Overall, it's a $3 million purchase of land and placement of conservation easements on those lands to permanently protect them. The request that Greenbelt has before our Community Preservation Committee is for $250,000 to go towards the total cost of that $3 million. The other monies, Chris can walk us through those other funding sources. And so I know that Chris has been before both the Open Space Committee and the CPC, the Conservation Commission, and last night, the Planning Board. All three of those boards or committees have voted to endorse the project. And this is slated to be before the CPC this Thursday to talk more.
right against the MBTA zoning.
It'll be before that. They're earlier. I think
You're at 5,
Afternoon.
they're at 5 and
the others at 7.
is that 7? Exactly. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Chris. I know that Mark Resnick, our town planner, has been intimately involved. He walked the property area and has been working with Chris, setting up meetings, agendas and that sort of thing. And
Do we have the ability to put his maps on the screen?
yes.
I do have copies. I see some of you have copies in your
Yeah.
packets.
But we're also worried about the recording and
Understood.
people who aren't here.
Let me open it up and while I'm doing that, Chris.
Why don't you go ahead? Yes.
Good evening. Greg has done a wonderful job introducing this, but just for the record, Chris LaPointe, I'm president of Essex County Greenbelt. I think you probably all know who Greenbelt is, but if not, we're the Land Trust of Essex County. We're headquartered over in Essex. We own about 80 acres of land in Manchester and about 150 acres of conservation restrictions. We've been a partner with the town, a partner with Manchester Essex Conservation Trust and others locally for years. We're an organization with a mission to conserve land as working farmland, wildlife habitat, scenic resources, places that people can recreate. hopefully visited some of our properties around the county. All our land is open to the public, free of charge. As Greg laid out, Greenbelt has the opportunity to acquire 330 acres of land from De Normandy that is partially in Manchester and partially in Gloucester. So for those of you who've been in town for a long time, you may recall in the late 1990s, there was a significant conservation effort, essentially the first phase of this project, which protected 120 acres of the Manchester land. De Normandy, who we're now buying the land from, was essentially the conservation buyer in that transaction. And most, but not all, of the Manchester acreage was protected in that effort. So 30 acres at the top of Long Hill remains unprotected with access from Holborn Road. After that initial transaction, that same landowner acquired another 180 acres on the Gloucester side of the line from Boston, Maine. Those two parcels together, those multiple parcels, but that acreage together totals our entire project area. As you are probably aware, this area is directly adjacent to about 1,400 acres of land that includes Gloucester watershed land, includes Cranberry Pond, and a significant area that protects the headwaters of Cap Brook and Wolf Trap Brook as we roll up towards 128. There's about 8 miles of trails on just the land that we have under contract, and that connects into about at least a 20-mile trail network that's exists before you hit roads. So it's truly a regional resource. As Greg described, Greenbelt has the property under contract for $3 million. We've been fortunate to amass a pretty significant amount of money already. So we received a $1.1 million grant from the state through the Landscape Partnership Program that will fund all of the land in both Manchester and Gloucester. And we've raised substantial funds either through invitations to apply to foundations or other private monies that we've raised. We're essentially down to about a $500,000 funding gap between monies that we've raised or have identified and have a high likelihood where we need to get to that $3 million total purchase price. Our proposed project structure is that Greenbelt would own all of the land. So we would manage it, would be responsible for maintenance and stewardship, make sure the trails are cleared and there's good signage and appropriate parking forever. In Gloucester, the city has agreed to hold a conservation restriction over the land that we'll own in Gloucester. The late 1990s portion of the project, that conservation restriction is and will continue to be held by Manchester Essex Conservation Trust. But the request before the town of Manchester is whether there's a willingness to invest in the project and to hold a conservation restriction over the land that is presently unprotected on the Manchester side. So about 30 acres of land at the top of Long Hill. That piece of the property by itself, the conservation restriction on that land by itself has been appraised, and we've shared the appraisals with the CPC, has been appraised by itself at $1.35 million. So we're asking the town to consider an investment of $250,000 towards a conservation restriction that's been valued at $1.35 million. I know you have a lot on the agenda this evening and may have questions, so I will pause there, but I'm happy to take questions or to go in to further detail on any and all of this.
So it might be helpful, Chris, if you could just use the screen there, just sort of outline
Sure.
what we're talking about here.
So we have everything in red under agreement, and I realize the map is confusing because of the lot layouts. So in Gloucester, all of this acreage that is knitted together with existing conserved land that the city owns. This is the town line. This is the Rockport line. Sorry, the railroad.
Yeah.
Excuse me, the railroad. Cooper Trask off of Magnolia, Holborn Road, Dexter Pond Conservation Area, touch the screen. Shoot. Auburn Road comes up here.
Yeah.
There are presently parking at Dexter Pond and presently 2 to 3 additional parking areas that exist that folks use to access the trail system in this part of Long Hill presently. So we would be acquiring everything in red. The request would be for the town to consider holding a conservation restriction over this acreage at the top of Long Hill and a strip along the railroad tracks, but this is the main event. Again, because the map is a little confusing, just a reminder, that square is owned by the town. So that was part of the initial project in the late 1990s. I believe the town acquired that potentially for a
Yeah, what is that?
water tower. I don't know the full
It
history.
was identified as a future site for another water tank.
Okay.
And that has easements and otherwise, so that would be unaffected by the conservation project.
What is that long strip that comes out?
This piece,
Yeah,
I would need to look back at my title report, but that is just that's a parcel that is not owned by this owner. That's it's either owner's unknown or it's more research needs to be done to figure out who the private owner is.
Like one of those old wood lots.
yeah.
Most of these are, I mean, you can see what
I
the
mean, just
pattern
the
is,
shape of it looks like some kind of right of way or something like that.
but these are all that same pattern.
Yeah.
These are all these old wood lots that are stacked up together. So there's a plan from the late 1800s that has this entire thing is platted out like that.
I guess the first question would be, does the CPC have the money?
So the answer to that is yes.
Is that going to affect things like the Sweeney?
Sweeney's, that's probably not gonna get to this year's budget, but certainly could affect, I don't know how much bathhouse renovations, and this is just the preliminary discussions. I don't think any, Nate's gotten involved as far as coming up with budgeting, as far as, they're just identifying what they have some capital projects that will address.
For your information, generally, we do this sort of thing at the annual town meeting. Because there are lots of capital projects and many of them qualify for CPC funds. And it's personally makes me a little uncomfortable because I have this much money right now. Can you go ahead with the purchase if Manchester says, we'll let you know in April?
So I should explain for everyone the timing constraint and the reason that we're asking for the unusual request to go to a fall meeting. And that is that there's really 2 issues. One, we have a contract deadline that is just after the first of the year. That's one point. The almost the more important point is that the entire project needs to be closed before the end of June in order to use the state money. So regardless of whether we got an extension to closing with the landowner that we're buying from, we still need to have everything closed by the end of June. The challenge that I see with us going forward and buying the property, waiting for annual town meeting, is that I think it's a difficult story to tell that Greenbelt has purchased the property. And then 3 months later, we're going to Manchester town meeting and asking for money to help with that purchase. There's no better way to say it than that. That's just that would be a challenge. So that would be a risk that we would have to be willing to take. And it would also, I just think it's hard for us to go forward with a purchase without knowing that we have the funding lined up. And I think it's also a challenging situation to explain to voters why they're being asked 3 months after we bought the land. So I think it's a challenge. I hear you loud and clear on the discomfort about the timing, and I appreciate that very much. And understand that this board will.
Yeah, I'm
Discuss
also uncomfortable with the timing, to be honest with you. Two reasons. One, it's hard. You've done it. I appreciate the education on what you're trying to do, because I probably needed that anyway if we were gonna talk CPC funding, but we usually get a list of things, and part of what I think the CPA and the select board discusses, out of all the good ideas that people have, right? Which ones make the cut? So without knowing what else is a potential request for CPC funding, how do I know this is the best use of the town funds? Why would I endorse this over something else that may also be worthwhile? I don't know what else is on the CPC.
If I could respond.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, please, yeah.
That's a fair question, and I think in my world, we're asked constantly, how do you decide what projects you're going to work on, right? And we might have a list of 100 of the greatest properties in Essex County in rank order. But it's almost never the case that number 1 through 5 come up next year, right? We might have number 10 and number 17. And they're still really good, and we can assess them on their own merits, because we know that all of this work, the timing of the bathhouse, the opportunity to buy real estate, when permits are going to be ready to do XYZ project, it's both priority and opportunity. And so with real estate, and this is one of the challenges, I know a lot of communities have exceptions to their normal. Most towns want to bring things in the spring, and that's understandable. A lot of places also sort of acknowledge the realities of real estate is it's sort of available when it's available.
Right.
So your concern is very well founded, and it's also, I feel like in the length of time that I've been doing this, when properties like this are available, there's a need to sort of assess them on their merits.
I guess my other question would be, what are other uses for the land? I mean, is it something that we would never use for another purpose anyway, and that's why it's also a good reason to put it
Well,
under conservation?
Okay, we don't
That-
own it, so,
So if we were to purchase it, or, the land probably is, its highest and best use is residential. And as, that whole Colburn neighborhood of pretty high-end homes.
Mhm.
And you could expand into those 30 acres. I think that's why the CR appraised as high as it did. In terms of other town uses, given its sort of distant location, I don't see other municipal uses.
So basically though, if it wasn't put under conservation, it would its likely use would be higher end homes.
Yes,
That's kind of,
yeah.
I should have asked my question
Yeah.
better.
And I think traditionally, we have been using CPA funds for relatively small projects. And I think, from my perspective, I think it's better to use those funds for sort of legacy projects. And I think this qualifies clearly for that. This is a pretty significant legacy project. And one of the primary goals in the master plan, as well as the CPC plan, is to make sure we're conserving important lands.
We have a target for was it 9 square miles we have in town?
Yeah, so the target is around 40% of your land mass.
Okay, and what are we
in
at?
the center. We're in the mid-30s, which is pretty darn good.
Right, okay, that's kind of what I was getting at.
We have a good conservation base of land already. Sort of the national goal that the current administration targeted was 40%. And many communities have adopted that as a goal. We haven't formally adopted that as a goal. We state in our master plan that, we want to make sure we're conserving important lands. We didn't put a numerical target on that in the master plan that I'm remembering. Guess I should double check, but I'm not remembering that we put a numerical target. But we have talked about it, we have talked about, and, and wanting to increase our holdings. So I understand this is out of cycle. But I do think it's an opportunity that it's important to seriously consider when that opportunity is before us.
When does everyone have to get their request into, by the end of the year, right?
Yes, yeah, 1st of December, I think is their deadline.
December, so. Would you be comfortable revisiting this in the middle of December?
This is a town meeting.
But it has
Yeah, but
to,
I'm saying, but we have a better idea of what people are asking for.
I think what he was saying is they're looking for our support to have this on the warrant for the November meeting.
Yeah.
We want this in November.
That's what I
Yeah.
think.
right, because they're hoping, they need to close by they need to,
I hear what Ann's concerns are. My question is at roughly a little over $9,000 an acre. What do we get in return? We're basically, I'd like to see somehow the town maintaining about 25 to 27 acres of land that we can use at a later time, as you pointed out.
I think that's not an option. This is a purchase from a single owner who's offered it to the
I
Greenbelt
understand that, but then I want,
whole kit.
I'd like to explore what we could do. Basically, $250,000 is a lot of money. And I'd like to see some kind of return on investment. Right, I don't know if Greenbelt can then seed it back, sell it back to us for $1 with the idea that it's gonna be that the town will maintain restrictions on the land, but not put it into conservation trust until such time as that we may need to put it into a conservation trust as a trade-off with the state.
Well, you're not paying full rate on the land to begin with.
Well, the price has been established at, right, roughly, if you across the board, it's a little over $9,000 an acre. I'm just thinking that we can
That's we've started with.
blend
We
it.
started with a purchase price and we've funded nearly all of it and so the request we're able to make to the town is a fraction of the value of the thing that you would be
But
buying,
you're buying it for $3 million,
everything.
330 acres of land for $3 million,
Correct,
$9,000 an acre.
right, but you can imagine the land in Gloucester that doesn't have development access isn't $9,000.
I'm just trying to come up with a number that's palatable. Okay, my concern, and although I think it's been addressed for the short term, is that we discussed last month that we can't expand Newport Park because we don't have any land to trade the state,
Mhm.
okay? For, was it 1 for 3, 3 for 1? As far as trading that,
typical.
right?
And
And
that,
we don't have any, we don't have that ability. I would like to maintain, I think, working with Greenbelt to hold on to something that we can use. Pardon?
I think the point is we don't own.
Right.
Okay, well, I want to know how we can,
You're asking how we can.
would that be something that you would entertain? If we give you $250,000, we want the right to be able to,
Yeah.
I want the right
So
to be able
that's,
to use that.
I appreciate where you're coming from on that. I don't think that's an arrangement we would want to do. The funding from the state for the Landscape Partnership Program is to acquire all of this acreage and permanently protect it. So it's
The purpose of the purchase is to not build anything
No, we're
on
not,
it.
I don't care if you give me deeded rights to wetlands that we can't build on. Okay? All right, or you transfer it with deed restrictions, as long as there's no conservation trust on it, that we can then apply a conservation trust later on if we're looking to trade land with the state.
Saying hold off on the conservation trust at time of purchase, so we could use it as a card to
Exactly.
play with the state
I
later
want,
on.
I want to put something in the bank. Does that make sense?
it ends up in the same place anyway. It's all gonna end up.
I think
It's just the challenge I think that we have here is the bulk of the other funding has strings attached to it, right? So I don't know if we can work with those strings. We can pursue it a little further and kick the can on that tire, just kick that tire a little harder to.
We heard this last
Using the
month.
wrong metaphor here, but anyway.
I think from our standpoint, so I appreciate the consideration of the request that we made. 2.75 million of the other dollars are coming to this project to permanently protect the whole thing. So that's the challenge is that there is momentum behind that concept. And I think I appreciate where you're coming from in this, but I think that the logistics of that, I'm happy to think about further, but I might not be.
Again, my point is if you put a deed restriction that can't be developed, short of a conservation restriction on it, allow that parcel of land, whatever it is, at 20 or 25 acres, that Manchester would have the ability to trade off later on down the road by putting it to conservation trust. Again, maybe this, I don't know, we have other issues. We have housing issues here.
Well, I guess
Okay.
that what you're getting at is, we are a small town, right? And we have lots of land needs and the fact that we're over 30% conservation is really good.
It is.
Personally, I would feel a lot more comfortable if we had an actual target. What do we want to conserve? And then you develop a plan to conserve the amount of land until you reach your target. If we don't have a real target that the town has agreed on, it's a little.
It's more vague than a concrete number. I mean, so the master plan identifies the Western Woods area,
Yeah.
the Gordon Woods area, and this eastern part of town.
So this specific section was identified in the
Yes.
master plan as something that the residents wanted to conserve.
So those are the three areas of town where it was identified that additional conservation efforts were desired. We stopped short in the master plan, to my recollection, of putting an acreage or percentage number. And so since the adoption of the master plan, we've done the one parcel, the Christian Hill parcel in the Western Woods. That was
It was a little bit locked away and not much could be done there anyway, right? So that was a little bit of an easier call.
yes.
Whereas this, if we needed land for something and somebody had the ability to sell it to us, that's a more difficult.
Again, I'm not advocating developing any of this land.
Right.
No, I understand.
Okay, I just want to be able
So
to
I-
use this land to
okay.
develop something else later.
I think
I have a question. All of this land is owned by De Normandy, right?
Yes.
And this is an all or none proposition that De Normandy is promoting or requiring. In other words, you either get it all or you get none of it.
We're interested in buying all of it. He's interested in selling all of it.
Okay. But it's not like you could go ahead with 270 acres or 200. You want to get as much as you can.
Yeah.
And you've got this grant, I don't know. I mean, the whole deal is 3 million. My other question is, so right now, you certainly want to get as much as you can, but it's not like black and white. You either buy all 330 acres or I'm not talking to you. Is that the
If
situation?
Manchester
I
didn't
don't
fund the
completely
piece
follow
that you
you.
were,
So our goal, if
I understand what your goal is.
preferred strategy is to partner with Manchester. on
Sure.
Putting this funding together. Obviously, if the CPC doesn't advance this, if this board doesn't advance it, if town meeting rejected it, we would work to raise money from any other source we could find between that town meeting and closing to work to acquire the land. We wouldn't immediately give up, but
When you say for other money sources, I mean, if this land is not part of that, why then maybe you need less money.
I think
yeah, we're not looking to carve pieces out of it.
I understand. My second question is, you've got a list of your revenue sources, but you don't have a list of your revenue uses. In other words, you've got $3 million and this is where this money is coming from.
Right, that's our use. We're buying all of the land for $3 million.
There isn't you can't break it down. $3 million is a check that's written to Normandy. That's the end of it?
We have a single contract that addresses all of this acreage.
Right.
With a $3 million purchase price.
Okay, so $3 million not only gets you the land, but it also puts it in the conservation. I mean, conservation is something you're doing. You're just acquiring the land and then you're gonna turn around and put it into conservation, right?
Not completely following the question. We're
Are those two separate steps? You buy the land, I now own the land,
We're gonna buy and own the land.
and then the next
We're gonna
day,
Convey, the next day, the same day, we're going to convey a conservation restriction
Right.
over land that we own to Gloucester. And if Manchester is a partner, we would convey a conservation restriction to Manchester.
understood, okay. So the $3 million all goes to Normandy for the acquisition of 330. Okay, that's what I needed to kind of understand. I thought there were other things, like
No,
I'm
no,
paying
sorry.
North to Normandy $2 million. I gotta use $100,000 for the state to do something.
Sorry, no, I was, that's a perfectly reasonable question that I was misunderstanding.
Okay, all right, so I understand the number. So it's $3 million, and I understand it's difficult to know how much each acre is worth, because these have different values, depending upon where you are.
Right, it's been appraised, but it's not parsed out.
Understood. I mean, and as Brian was saying, $250,000, I don't know how many. In Manchester, at the top of Colburn Road, how much money, how many acres does that get?
Buy some wetlands somewhere.
That's maybe what you
I'll
get.
have the cheapest land I can get, as long as I can have a parcel that at some point, if we identify some other land that we can put affordable housing on, but is buffered by current conservation.
Yeah, we've got
Restrictions.
a particular
We-
problem that we're kind of
Right,
focused
right.
on, and I'm not sure that this is a solution
Yeah.
to that problem, but.
I think
You have
it-
your.
It's a good question.
I think it is.
Okay.
But the 250,000, I think that's probably the largest, well, you'll find out. I think that's the largest request that CPC's had for any project in its 20-year history. Maybe,
So we've been funding the affordable housing.
yeah, that's 200. That's kind
About
of
200.
automatic every year for a few years, but.
So we, assuming the state matches in that 20% range, our total annual revenue on CPC is around 650,000. I don't know the exact number in the bank right now, but it's in excess of the 250.
Hmm.
Jack just raised his hand, so he may know that number offhand.
Hi, everybody. Jack Burke, CPC. We have 450,000 in the bank right now.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
What about other projects? I mean, I guess that's my concern is I don't wanna, I'm all about conserving land, but is this gonna take away from other projects that residents need?
So, like I say, with 600 plus coming in every year, and if we have 450 in the bank, this would leave 200 in the bank. So that would give you 800,000 to work with for FY '26. And we have typically spent in the 400 to 500 range each year.
We don't foresee anything going over that, nothing coming up.
That includes the $250,000 annually to, Affordable Housing Trust.
Yes. Yeah. So from if history is any guide, I'm not worried about losing that 250 and risking other projects.
Okay, that's my main concern.
Obviously, if some other big project, presented itself tomorrow, there's always that.
There's nothing on the horizon.
There's nothing on the
That's
horizon.
what-
There's nothing in the works
Not
that would.
the affordable housing area, because my big concern is our biggest problem is housing right now. If I look at how much land we've conserved versus how much housing we have produced, okay?
Right.
We've done great on
Way
the
under-
conversation
we're way out of
side,
balance.
conservation side, and we have not done enough. And so my personal preference was, is there any way we could increase the amount of funding through the CPA funds to really get something done on affordable housing. I know we're gonna be discussing it again in a couple of, the next, is it November or something? That's my real hesitation here. I'm not worried about, the Parks and Rec stuff we do and all that other stuff, but we are woefully behind on housing.
And
And
I don't mean to
Yeah, yeah.
undercut that at all.
yeah.
But frankly, 250,000 is not gonna make or break an
No,
affordable housing
that's true.
project.
That is true.
It takes a lot more than that. I mean, to really fund affordable housing, we may have to consider increasing the CPC surcharge. That's a whole different topic of
Or
conversation.
devoting an entire year's worth of, if you have 800,000,
Right, or use, yes, 600 to 800,000 to bond.
that's what I'm saying. Is this
Um,
taking the 250 out, is that gonna prevent us from doing something meaningful on affordable housing? Because the chipping in 250K a year isn't getting us where we need.
Mhm.
And that's why I'm worried about losing even more. Because we're falling behind.
Okay,
So
I think the chances that we're going to be able to increase the contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust
Mhm.
next spring is not great.
People are already questioning it.
Yeah.
But you could take
Okay. so
half of
this-
those monies and bond
Yeah,
and,
this-
and lock in that 300,000 a year for a 10-year
This doesn't
bond.
answer this
But this particular project really doesn't affect that one way or the other. that
I
ability.
don't feel that it does. I think you still have that option.
So even if we approve this tonight, it's still contingent on CPC passing it, right?
See, yes, the
Right.
committee has to approve it before it can go before the voters. And so and then you would have to vote to put it on the warrant.
We're not being asked to approve anything tonight. It's more endorsing it as it goes forth to
This is
CPC.
to let us express our opinions,
Okay.
understand where we stand. The CPC will do what they do.
Right, exactly.
They will come back to us and say they want it on, if they approve it, then they want it on the warrant for November 18th. And then we get to decide
Right.
whether that puts anything else at risk that we think is even more important.
Chris, you mentioned, as Brian had mentioned, somehow using that land to leverage our ability to put land in conservation under Manchester's name rather than under your name. Under your name, it doesn't do us any good other than the fact that it is conserved land. But you know the point that he was making, and we're all here on the select board are aware of the challenge we have on that. Can you make some phone calls on that and find out how that might?
You
Maybe-
need land that's, if I understand, municipally owned but unprotected, like not with a deed restriction,
Correct.
not with a conservation restriction, not committed to the Conservation Commission or anything else in order to swap, because you're trying to take some other land out of Article 97. Is that
Yep,
the gist of it?
I was just about to explain that.
Right.
Yes.
So, right. So, for the reasons I've described, I think this one is challenging for that profile, but
If you happen to run across something like that, let us.
what's the amount of acreage that you're,
Should we kind of
1
call it?
acre.
We might want to call it,
Probably under, but, today's information indicated that we could probably do it without using that particular.
I understand that, but I'd like to have 5 acres in our pocket. I'd love to have 30 acres in our pocket. But it's something I want to have, so we don't have to go through this again. Yes, you took a walk over Newport Park.
Yes.
Okay, but as a developer comes in and starts to look at helping out, he might want to start, that works over here. Okay, with a developer's mindset, he's gonna look at that and say, but I do need something over here. Oh, that's under conservation trust. We can't, even if it's 100 feet into the buffer. Okay, to make it a project that a developer can work with. And I want to have that luxury to be able to do that.
I understand.
It doesn't sound like this project is the
I'm
road.
sure
to
this
get
project
there.
gives us that vehicle. That's. um,
Is there anyone online who wants to speak?
Saw Jack's hand earlier, I'm not seeing it.
I am sorry.
Okay. My suggestion is that I think we know the questions, the opportunities, that we wait and see what the CPC, perhaps several of them. You know, Mark, do you have something you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I think Chris has explained the project quite well. I understand your concern about trying to have some land that could be traded. I think it relates particularly to Newport Park. There's a lot of development constraints on that land and the Newport House Hill property that's conserved. So I think the opportunity there really lies within property that's already owned by the housing authority. So we are in the process of having that surveyed, having wetlands delineated, so we can have more information moving forward. So I don't think realistically that's the property that you're gonna probably try and get do the swap on, just because of the condition of the surrounding land there. So it doesn't hurt to, like you say, for the town to acquire some extra land at some point in case there are other opportunities that we need to unrestrict or and do a swap in the future. So again, that's a project that we can work towards as well. That's kind of different than.
So I think without having a report from the CPC, we just need to come back at our next meeting. And I mean, the Concom, when I first heard of this, I assumed it would be a tremendous push to get all of the boards that have to approve it to look at it and approve it. But the Concom is there, the planning board is there, the open space and recreation is there. So there seems to be a lot of support in town for this. And leave it at that, we'll come back and decide whether this is something that, if the Concom says, CPC says they want to spend the money, then we need to goes on the warrant.
Thank you very much
Thank you
for your
very
time.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
When's the CPC? Was that Thursday?
Thursday at 5.
Spent a lot of time here.
How big is that little square there that is for a water tower?
Oh, it might be an
About an
8.
inch and a half.
Oh,
I'm gonna say it's a little, it's an acre or a little over an acre.
It's in that area,
Okay.
1 to 2 acres
Okay.
would be my
Well,
guess.
there you go. There's your acre.
Not by one, 25 acres. I want to see a nice return, not my investment.
Okay, we have people waiting for us and we're half an hour late at this point, so
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
1.03 acres.
Yeah, right on.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's what an inch square gets you.
Please come in. I'm sorry we're so late.
Are we finally up?
You are
Yes.
finally up.
Yay, right.
Get in here.
Forgive me, I have scrambled my notes. And
Lose and John.
Where would you like us?
anywhere.
So, yeah, we have 2 candidates for the welcome committee.
Mhm.
Julie Tassi and Jen Simone.
Yes.
Say that?
Yeah.
And so we're here to be interviewed and see what you think.
There's one position.
No, there are multiple positions.
You have to find it out. If there are multiple positions, fine. But
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
you're not fighting with each other.
Yeah, no, I would think.
Okay, Julie,
I'm not,
could you start?
I'm Julie.
Okay.
Yes. What would you like to know?
I would like to know a little bit about you and why you think you are a good fit for the welcome.
Okay, well, I grew up in Manchester, moved away, moved back about 14 years ago. My kids went to school here and I've been on different committees throughout the town, never on a town committee, but different boards and committees, Boy Scouts, church, the community center, and PTA, PTOs. I'm ready to, my kids are grown, I'm ready to give my time.
Good, yeah. Welcome back, Julie. I don't think I've seen you in a couple of years or so. I know you're in touch with my wife from time to time. So that's great to hear. Have you been in touch? Who's chair of the welcoming committee? Is that Leslie or
It is, I'm not sure if it's Leslie or Christine.
Christine? I wasn't sure.
Leslie stepped down.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
Christine reached out to me and asked me to,
Oh, great.
I was with her on the Boy Scouts. We were committee members of the Boy Scouts for
Okay,
many
good,
years, so.
good. So you had a chance to chat with her a little bit?
Yes, I actually went and met with both of them already. And they told me, give me the overview of what they're doing and they have an agenda for the meeting tomorrow night. And I reached out to other people to get them involved as well, so.
All right, any particular unique, I mean, welcoming is, hey, if you like to meet new people, you're in. So, is there, anything in particular that you want to kind of get involved with this committee or just see
I
how it
just want to
grows?
help out. It sounds like they need help and they need bodies and I'm willing to do that. Whatever they need done, be a soldier.
Great. Having wanting to participate is the number one criteria. Okay,
I've known Julie for a couple of years and appreciate her husband on basketball. I think she's well qualified, she's got her roots in the town were deep.
Thank you. Jeff?
So, again, Jen Desimone, and I've been here 4 years, but I have, since the late 1800s, early 1900s, my great grandparents were here, my grandparents, my mom was raised here. So I kind of found my way back here 4 years ago, and love it, and I can never imagine leaving, so. I've just loved it ever since. I've tried to volunteer wherever I could, and I was on the Council on Aging for a time for 3 years. In a conflict of interest with a new job, so I had to pull off of that. But I do try to volunteer on other committees. Pancake breakfast, the 4th of July parade. I coach kids, girls on the run, young children, not prisoners. I camp the first spring I came here, and I saw this on Facebook that they were looking for help, and it's just right up my alley. So can't wait to be part of it if I'm able.
That's good.
Again, I've known Jen for a couple of years, walking dogs. It started out. She's been serving the pancake breakfast a couple of years now. So her commitment is.
Do I get extra strawberries if we put it up?
It's not really getting cranky. This year they got cranky. We ran out of last year, 2 years ago.
Every year, whatever I'm serving, they seem to run out.
Yeah, she does have a heavy hand.
Yeah.
She does have a heavy hand.
Portion control.
Yeah.
Now I know who to go to.
Yeah.
yeah.
I am looking for a motion.
I move that the select board appoint Julie Foster to the welcoming committee for a term until expiring on June 30th, 2026.
Second.
Jeff?
Yes.
Yes.
Brian? Kathy? Anne says yes?
Yes.
Okay. Is there another motion?
Yep. I move that the select board appoint Jen DeSimone to the welcoming committee for a term to expire on June 30th, 2026.
Second.
John?
Yes.
Anne says yes.
Yes,
Yes.
And yes.
Excellent. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
patient.
thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
All right. When put the meeting tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night.
Yes,
All right,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
Start
You
right
have
off.
to get sworn
Okay.
in.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Oh,
much.
Thank
you need to come, you need to come to the town hall and get sworn in.
When?
Town clerk can swear you in as official
I'll send
committee
you-
members.
I'll send you the info tomorrow
Okay.
with
But
your
you
letter
need
and
to,
then.
if you're going to a meeting, you won't be members unless you have gone to the town clerk's office and got sworn in.
How late are you here? Sign for it.
Till 5.
You can still go to the meeting, you just can't vote.
You,
That's all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you go to the meeting.
What time do you open in the morning?
8:30.
And Thursday nights are open later?
Yes.
Yeah, Thursday nights they're open later.
Yeah, but that's
but,
Wednesday.
but this is a
But it's
Wednesday
the
meeting.
meeting.
No, I know, I'm
Yeah.
just saying, you can always attend the meeting if you're not sworn in, but you can't vote until you are sworn in.
Okay.
So if for some reason you can't get sworn in before the meeting, you
Just make
attend the
Thursday.
meeting, enjoy yourself, and then Thursday get sworn in, and when their hours are more amenable.
How late are you open on Thursdays?
6:30.
Still up.
One more question. Fridays, are you open?
And you're not open Fridays?
No.
Mondays?
Yes.
Mondays,
Alright.
yes.
We'll figure it out.
Maybe these are questions, maybe perhaps these were questions we should have asked before we appointed you.
We'll eventually get sworn in.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's supposed to be your question.
Well, that was by Becky Jake's channeling and I forgot to do it.
it.
Out of sight, out of mind.
It's a good question to ask.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda is the waterfront event permit discussion. And we have a bullet point of
So, yeah, looking for some additional input, if you feel that these are the correct bullet points, or there's ones you would add, would you amend some of the ones that are listed there? And then, assuming we get the right list, then we can work on crafting a more formal set of ones.
I think the only question I had was, I think this was what we discussed at the separate meeting we had with Chief Fitzgerald, et cetera. Unclear on the sequence of events, though, or the sequence of permitting. So would this permit be reviewed and by whom before or after the Coast Guard issues a permit? Or is it, so this would, can we ensure that if the Coast Guard gives the final okay, can we ensure that this permitting process is completed before the Coast Guard? Or does the Coast Guard have to give their okay before we would go through the time and trouble of issuing our permit? I'm just unclear on the
My
process.
understanding is Coast Guard needs 90 days and we're asking for 120 days
For that reason.
for that reason.
Yeah.
All right. So we want to know 120 days so they can review it and then go to the Coast Guard and give them that 90-day window. Is my understanding.
That's the way it sounded.
what constitutes an event?
Right, that was the other gonna be.
Lots of boats.
Oh,
The discussion was anything that's advertised. So, I know that's, yeah,
So.
I can see where you're going, but yeah, that was the discussion, I think, right?
Yeah, I think because part of the problem is that a pop-up event on a beautiful Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, it
was
wasn't,
just a bunch of recreational boaters who say, hey, let's get together. How do you can't,
yeah.
you know,
right, it wasn't
Regulate
five, it wasn't
that.
5 boats on weekend tied
I
up.
forget what the discussion was, but Bion
So-
and Chief Fitzgerald were pretty clear on what they thought the definition was. I just can't remember what it is.
I think the first thing I'd like to see is, what is an event?
What's the
Is it
definition?
just on the water? Or is it, you know, somebody decides to have a bonfire on Long Beach?
No, I think this is strictly
on
on the water. That's all this applies to.
And
So basically, it's
How
what's the
many-
scope of the
how
proposed
many-
permit.
events I'm not asking you to answer this, but
No, yeah,
how many events are there annually that you would expect to fall, that the committee would expect to fall into this category? How many?
probably one,
One or
maybe
two.
two.
Say a couple a year at this point.
Yeah.
And I think that the one that we're drilling down on is not gonna happen again. So-
Well, but there was the one from the prior year where
Well, that was-
Marine
Yeah, there were
did
two.
that.
at
Yeah,
once,
Marine
right.
Max, yeah.
And there was the misery challenge, but I don't know if that will come back or not. If
That would
something,
fall under that purpose.
yeah, that would fall under this.
And I wasn't at any of the harbor discussions on this, but do other towns have permits? Did we ask other towns, do you have permits and how do you manage this sort of activity? I mean, somebody must have asked Gloucester because they've got their greasy pole and other stuff. But I'm just wondering if they have a permit process and,
Schooner.
or the Skinner, you know, and what questions do they ask? I don't know.
Blessing of the fleet.
Yeah, yeah.
So perhaps you could ask the harbor committee to do some.
Yeah, Beverly, Gloucester, I don't
Yeah,
think
I think-
Essex probably has one.
I think Vion did ask, but I don't know what the answer
Yeah,
is.
I'm just not remembering the conversation so many weeks or months ago. What I personally would like to see is, if we're in general agreement with some of this stuff, maybe they ought to just draft the permit. What you call it, instructions or whatever, because that would outline the scope of the type of event that requires the permit, the 120-day lead time. You know, if they kind of draft the document and then maybe we take a look at it. I think we were in general agreement, we need to do something. I just can't remember some of the specifics right now.
Well, they applied for a Coast Guard permit. There must be some sort of guidelines there. I've never even seen the Coast Guard permit.
The main discussion we had here was because we are such a small town, everything on this list is pretty doggone expensive. So that really the
Yeah.
purpose of the permit was to make the event owner pay for it all.
And,
That's, yeah,
and so we know, so we can
It's
prepare
properly
Right.
staffed,
for it, right?
you know, because for instance, what triggers an EMS detail?
Right.
I mean, how many boats? Is it 10 boats that, and you're absolutely right, what constitutes an event? And then are there certain criteria, okay, we've hit this benchmark, now you're gonna need.
Right.
An
That would
extra
be-
boat coming down from Gloucester, an EMS, okay, so those are the
Right.
things that we still have to.
the purpose of it was really to put the onus on the event
No, I understand that.
administrator to fund it, plan it, get the resources in.
I understand like the size of the event, nobody.
What's non-boat owner transportation? What is a non-boat owner transportation?
That was a bunch of Zodiacs taking people out to the raft.
From running people from
Well,
Tux out.
From Tux, and then running, and then, so there was a lot of,
Basically a shuttle for
basically a
non-boat owners.
unsanctioned water shuttle, shuttles,
Okay,
all right?
okay.
So again, to that point, you might have, if you would have said, okay, there were 300 boats there and it was 4 people per boat. That's not necessarily true because there were a lot of people there that weren't on a boat. Right?
Well, they were taken out, in other words, this raft could, I know that there was a band out there, but the raft could support other people than just the
It
band.
was two rafts.
There was underwater. There was, the raft was overloaded. That was the.
All right, so non-boat owner transportation, that's not a one-way plan. That's like, we take them out,
Yeah, bring
the
it back
guy
in.
leaves and hey, it's your problem.
Well, that's, okay, and I think that was part of the problem, because I think a lot of the Zodiacs that may have shuttled 2 or 3 people out there probably overloaded
Well,
and bring them back.
Well, they just come back and at the end of the day, hey, I'm done, I'm docking my boat, I'm going home.
and I guess it comes down to maybe a designated driver type situation.
That's,
You know, I went out in one boat, I came back in another boat,
yeah, I understand that.
because I was bored.
A lot of tough questions here that are kind of gray.
No, I think, but this is the first, I think we just took a first cut at this, right?
Appreciate that. Another of my concerns is somebody looks at this and says, that looks like an annoying set of things to do, I'm not gonna do anything. And they just pass the word around. Where does it go from being, a raft of, a raft and 6 or 7 of their friends into something that,
Yeah, I
this
think,
is back to the, what is an event?
Right.
And.
yeah, I
and
think we need a number.
We need a
to go
number,
by.
but suppose somebody comes in the middle of the afternoon and you're suddenly over the number.
I mean, generally though, those people aren't gonna be all together. Right, so you're not gonna have 300 people all together,
Oh, if it's-
not on
if-
purpose.
If your number is 300, then that's a different thing, but if your number is 100, you could. Or 50,
That'd be, what, 15, 20 boats for 100, right?
Yeah.
And that's not uncommon.
That's,
But I-
Usually you see them
That's
in
an afternoon
groups,
on the water with a
yeah,
large
group
family.
there, so it's.
That's,
yeah, so,
But like I said, we kind of went through all this and I just am having complete brain fog right now. I would like them to more thoroughly document the discussion we had at that
Yep.
hour and a half meeting or however long it was.
Yeah.
Because I think we asked all these questions.
and I'd like to know what Gloucester Beverly are doing.
okay, and what exactly are we requiring that the town acquire, a jet ski?
There is a jet ski in Essex that I think, but it skips in.
Yeah, I
Borrow,
don't,
Try it out for a while.
I don't know that you wanna go into capital
Where we
type
At the
things.
very bottom, other
Other
resources.
It was, one of the members brought up the fact that Essex does have a jet ski.
Yeah.
Whether or not it was, they were advocating to purchase one, acquire one, or at least try one out or borrow one to see how it works. I'm not quite sure where.
Well, we didn't really discuss that. What we discussed were just items and around, things that the event owners, the event sponsors should make sure are in place, pay for, and be, it says penalty for an unpermitted event. So I just think the documentation of the discussion needs to be a little richer and more full-bodied so we don't go revisiting that discussion all over again.
We need something though, so we can, like, you can't shut down something now because you have no rules.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We went through all this, the meeting
Right.
Brian and I were at, we went through all of these questions. Like I said, I'm just having complete brain fog.
A while ago.
Somebody was taking notes there and we should have a better representation of the discussion and decisions that were.
We have
were made
Carl,
at that. Yeah.
back here. Pardon?
Sorry,
Sorry, did I wake you? Can we get Carl Donan here at some point?
ah. I heard cow, and I was trying to imagine.
We'll see Carl.
Carl,
Carl, sorry,
that's right.
Right over that.
PB boy.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I think I'd like. We need to revisit this. I don't think we need to revisit this one next meeting.
I would maybe after
Maybe we should.
spring, spring town meeting, I mean, after fall town meeting.
I'm not sure that a permit. I'm not sure if that's a town meeting.
No, but after, let's
After
revisit
the
this
town
after, it's
meeting,
good.
you're saying.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
this
yeah,
is not, this is something that we
Okay,
can.
great.
It's been working on over the winter.
Yeah, but let's see it, like the draft and
Yeah.
the result of the
thing
discussion
is
we already had.
If we do impose 120-day waiting period, then sometime we should have something on the books by March, yeah.
Yeah, I think a draft, some kind of draft, even just something rough would be good to look at.
You want to put this on the agenda item thing,
And action items.
action item?
Early January,
Yeah,
so that we get some motion and don't come up to March and suddenly we're starting from here and we need to have it done.
Yeah.
Okay. The friendship tree trimming, Bartlett does the decoration of the tree, says they can do it this year, but it's getting to be too big. And, they suggested that they would be willing to take down the friendship tree and put up a small tree. And my reaction to that was not necessary. The tree is a town tree. So I think we should instruct Chuck that his budget should include, and I'm sure Tom would be willing to tell him how many hours he spent trimming the tree 15 years ago or 20 years ago. And maybe, but don't take his financial estimate on it.
Right.
When they say manageable size, that's kind of a qualitative statement. Do they have, what's he planning on reducing it 6 feet all around, or
Oh,
was
probably
that a discussion?
more like 15 feet high, and then outward, and I have Tom's word that the tree will recover brilliantly from that.
Okay, but is that something that he should do before the lights go on this year
Oh, no.
or after?
This year, the lights are okay.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
just,
This is post.
Oh, so this is post this year, so it
Post-holidays.
gives the tree many months to recover or whatever it has to do
Yeah.
for
before we-
December 2025.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
So the consensus of the board is that we trim it rather than replace it.
Yep,
Yeah.
give more mileage. All right. I will make a motion to that effect.
Excellent.
I move the board recommend the friendship tree to be trimmed at the town's expense.
Second,
Jeff,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy.
yes.
Anne says yes.
Yes,
Okay. The next is the town common flagpole discussion. And, the place, the exact place that it was on the diagram is very close to a Stewartia that was planted by the Friends of Trees probably 20 years, no, couldn't have been that far. In memory of Bill Saltonstall, it's a really nice tree. And, I think the place that we want, that we agreed we would put the pole would interfere with that tree. And my thought was that we could move the pole out toward the sidewalk, that part of the lawn comes to kind of a V. So that the base and the lights for the pole would be
beyond the tree.
beyond the tree and adjacent to the walkway, so the base would kind of meld in with the sidewalk on one side and the walkway on the other. And
Did our landscape designer person have an opportunity to check this new suggestion?
Yeah, he's fine.
Oh.
We had actually talked about it when he was here. He was toying with, you don't want to interfere too much with the church and the steeple. That's why he put it on
By the
the
side.
other triangle, the other angle of the triangle that we're talking about. We're still in the same triangle of grass. We're just going to the other angle.
So it's almost when you
Corner.
come down School Street,
when
you'll
you come
almost
down
run,
School Street, you will be looking-
almost run into it.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a little bit.
It's more in line with School Street,
Yeah, it is.
which is an advantage, I think.
So,
It's literally 15 feet up the street towards the intersection.
right. Okay. I want to revisit a comment that you made a month ago with regard to, because I think we voted to have a flagpole, correct? I think a month
We
ago
had to put it on the town,
on the town green,
No,
town meeting, town warrant,
on the town warrant. Okay,
yeah, town meeting.
to let the town have a discussion if they wanted to discuss it. But
okay, all right.
I'm hearing from a lot of people, why are we waiting?
All right, so I've got a question. This is what I wanted to go back to your comment. Because in that discussion, Greg, you had said, well, there were monies and this would cost a few $1,000s, but there were monies for that?
So we have a general facilities account. Building facilities fund,
Yes, this would be DPW related. I guess.
Yes.
Yes,
yes.
okay, and this would be in that category.
Yeah, I think I think we're in the $5,000 range.
Okay, all right. If that's the case, I would like to see us proceed and have this done whenever it gets done within a reasonable amount of time without necessarily putting it on the warrant. And I'd make a motion to that effect. That a flagpole be erected
Is there a second?
in a reasonable time.
Second.
I think we can still have discussion.
Sure.
My only concern is that we be sure that it's lighted appropriately.
Yeah. With appropriate lighting, because that will be, that will have an American flag on it that is up.
Yep.
24/7.
Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm sorry. There actually is already a law in the books that says POW MIA flags are sort of automatically permitted when you're flying the American flag in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Okay,
So it's not necessary that you make an official declaration. I mean, you can still, but it's not required because of the statute.
right. Okay.
Are there any other types of flags, like state or municipal, anything else that falls into that category? Is it just the MIA POW?
I'm only aware of that one. And so,
Okay.
town council made me aware of that.
And I don't know if we made the statement at the last one, but this would be the official town flagpole.
Right, yes.
Okay.
Are you going to have any public comment about that? I came just for that.
Public comment on,
Yes, we would like more.
so what we're currently discussing. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm Karen Gates from School in January Street, and I have talked to so many people since all that discussion started with the town and everybody else. And I personally have a very strong feeling about the American flag because that represents the whole country. It's not just Massachusetts, us here. That's where it stands. That's where Rosa Parks, the Indian flag, and went up, and that covers everyone. It doesn't matter what color you have, what race, what sex you have, anything. It covers everyone. So I'm not American. I came from Greece myself, first generation. I always tell my kids and my husband, I have to go out and put the American flag up for the 4th of July, the Memorial Day, because I have great respect for what America stands for and stood for a long time, for not only here, but for other countries. And I don't understand why we have to please everybody who wants to put a flag for their own, ideal or presence in this country. Everybody can put the flag in front of their home, on their home property. And the American flag stands for centuries that we're here now. It's changed only the number of stars, but still the American flag. And we have the state flag. I think we can use that also on that point from what I understand. But why we have controversial people who want to stand with flag because of a certain way they are and who they are. I don't think we should discriminate. That's kind of segregation, going backwards instead of going forward and be all one. When I see the parade coming with that monument that we have over veterans, my father in the country I came from, they have to go in service, the men. And I feel lucky that my kids didn't choose to go to the service here because they give their life. You never know when you go, if you're coming alive. And that's what that monument and the flag of the POW serves there. It's not about who we are, what color, whatever. It's about what we have done as a country and these poor souls who chose to go to be in the military, Navy, everything. And they didn't know if they were going to come back. Who in the world's name in this country or any other country has more done for a country than giving their life? Nobody. And that's what it stands. I cannot compare that with the country that I come from, or the gender I am, or how old I am, or whatever. We cannot compare that with anything other than the American flag and the POW and the flag for the veterans and the monuments. They represent the country. That's what everybody liked about America. Every time they have a problem, America is first to give. Earthquakes, wars, everything. We do everything. That's what we represent. We don't represent if I'm lesbian, gay, heterosexual, yellow, white, or black. It covers everyone. I was talking with my youngest son, who is now in his 40s also, and he said,
I think you
so I'm
made your
sorry,
point.
that's what, yeah, and a lot of people feel that, but they say there is no point of going there to talk because they do whatever. And I don't think that. I think you're decent human beings. You know what you're doing, but you try to help in this situation. That's what you're doing.
Okay, is there further discussion on the motion on the floor?
Maybe I just got to clarify it to use current budget's funds to erect a flagpole. It will be the town flagpole in that particular location with appropriate lighting. Period.
Second. All right, Jeff,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy,
No,
Anne says yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So. Put down those speakers, street signs.
Yes.
Okay. Are there other, liaison updates?
I have one. So I wish Mark was still here. So I attended the downtown improvement meeting the other day, and Mark happened to mention that the planning board was considering, not sure how I phrase it, spearheading a team or task force to develop what they call a master plan for the downtown. I remember conversations about that on some of the MBTA task force discussions, because as they got into looking at the zoning, they were thinking, wow, we don't really have a plan just for the downtown. Okay, and we might want to think about, how much should be commercial, how much, should we allow commercial entities to have, apartments above them. So there's no current zoning or plan, I should say, to a vision for what the downtown should look like. So when he mentioned it, though, he kind of indicated that it might be a strategy more for the general district, not just the downtown. So I don't know if you heard anything, Jeff, at a planning board meeting.
Well, isn't the MBTA, the zoning is gonna kind of, some of that's gonna work into that, right?
But what I have also.
So what I think, the discussions around the MBTA zoning have kind of precipitated a discussion about things that are not going to be included in the MBTA zoning. So may have a gap in our plan for the master plan, right? Well, so no, Mark mentioned it at a meeting. So my personal suggestion to Mark was that you might not want to call this a separate master plan. We have a town master plan, right? So maybe it should be some sort of refinement or next level of detail, because we don't want people doing something separate from what the master plan is saying. So I suggested to him, think about the language you use. If you put together a team, maybe it should be a task force to kind of look at something. But what was new to me was the fact that they seemed to expand the scope a little bit beyond the downtown and include the general district. He mentioned possibly, some things they might look at is like swapping, taking some residential lots out of the general district and putting it into a residential district. So it was a broader scope than what I had previously heard in MBTA zoning meetings. So I just wanted to mention it, that it came up in a DIP meeting. Nothing's been done. But I just wanted you guys to know about it.
I mean, is that something that you wait till after the MBTA plays
Yes, it was
out?
definitely,
Yeah,
yes, it was
right, yeah.
definitely for after that.
Right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's just that it seemed like a bigger scope than what originally had been discussed. So,
So Mark did mention at the end of the planning board meeting last night,
okay, okay.
there was a brief discussion on it. And yes, he emphasized that this would be after MBTA and special town meetings.
The general district is very large
Right,
and
exactly.
includes a lot of places that are purely residential. So
Right.
maybe it makes sense to break it out. And where it may have come from early in the MBTA process, before we found out what all the rules were, we were trying to build a downtown that had required retail on the first
Correct.
floor and 2 floors of residential above. And the state allows that to be built, but you can't
Can
require
require it as part of the MBTA
And
zone.
as a result, nothing, almost nothing that's purely commercials in an overlay district.
So really it'd be a focus study on the general district and potential amendments to it.
He likes a controversial town meeting.
That was it, that was all.
Yeah.
Yeah, just one thing, informal survey. How many of you folks have filled out the water survey? Lead, who are supposed to, and I know maybe some of you,
I took a look at it, I was like, oh.
all right, this is generally the
That was
most
my
common
reaction.
response.
Yes.
Jeff?
Like, really?
I'll let
Do I
my
gotta
wife
scratch
handle
my
that one.
butt?
Ah,
I let his wife handle that one.
And,
It's in my too hard.
all right,
books.
so I know what's going on here. Chuck said about, he sent out, I don't know, 2,500 surveys, he's got about 150 or 200 back. This is what, 3 weeks into it, he's gonna be sending out a reminder. Really, the key issue is for houses built after 1980, he's not worried about the comeback on those, and the EPA will probably give you a pass on those because they know that there will not be lead pipes in those houses. That does not represent a cross-section of Manchester's housing stock, however. So we'll see how things progress, but they're not quite as fast as he'd like.
So I thought the requirement was to send it out. Is there a required minimum response? Because I did not hear that.
There's the EPA is kind of playing this as they go, but there will be a minimum response and Chuck will,
We need to know what that is.
yeah. And he's got a plan to continually chase down people, but I don't know if he'll get to the number he needs to get to.
so ultimately, when the meter project is underway, that's when he's in each basement.
Right.
Yeah,
And can verify and get that data.
okay. So he's wrestling with that. The RFPs, I think, no, they have not gone out yet.
But that was an EPA created survey, like they
Yes.
created it, right? It was horrible. I mean, I'm just.
I was,
It was a
oh,
horrible
you looked at it
survey.
and said you didn't want to do it because you looked at it.
Well, it's just, if it had said, when was your home built? Okay,
Mhm.
and if it has been more recent than 1980, then you're done.
Right.
That would have been a smart way to construct a
They
survey.
didn't do
What?
that.
Because that's the position I'm in. I don't live in a really old place and now I still gotta go downstairs. I mean, it wasn't well.
No,
Yeah.
I agree. I filled it out and my house is.
So
after
maybe
1980.
if Chuck really wants those of us who are in an easier position to fill it out, he could provide a sample. If your house is newer than whatever it is, 1985, 1990, whatever, here's what you put in there.
I mean, realistically, it goes way back
Or-
further than that. It's-
See, those people, he may go back, because he knows in general what he's got a database that will say when the house was built. And for those houses, he's not gonna chase those people.
Well, that's what I'm saying though, but if he's looking, we need to understand what he's looking for. Is it participation? Is it a response, or does he need the information to feed the EPA? Because how you deal with it depends on which of those
He
three
needs a- he
scenarios
needs
it
a
is.
response.
If he needs a response, then give people the canned response based on the age of their house. If he sends me something that, hey, your house was built here, this is how you fill it out, I'd be happy
That's,
to,
yeah, that's easy to do.
right?
Yeah.
Make it easy for people to do the right thing.
It was not his algorithm.
But if he really, if, that's what I was trying to understand is what is the goal? If it is a response and you need the homeowner to respond, make it easy for the homeowner to respond.
We'll have to have,
To be continued.
to be continued. It continues to evolve. EPA is putting on some pretty high demands on communities about supplying filters to people until things are changed out, et cetera. So Jack and I are sitting down tomorrow to talk about all of this.
Oh, okay, you'll get more updated.
And then so we can provide, at some point, we need a full-blown discussion on the process. So. Point 12.
And I accidentally blew off the school committee meeting. I looked at my dinner and said, oh dear, I was supposed to be someplace else. They're not starting their budget work yet. That really is the part. That's where we and they intersect. They are allowed to run the schools all the way they want. And I think you've all heard more about MBTA zoning than any
Yeah.
rational human being ever wanted.
I just wanted one more time that the Friday, on the
Saturday
Saturdays.
morning,
I
that
thought
was
it was
very
very
good.
informative. I
Yeah,
thought it was
they did a
very
real
well
good
done.
job.
Size, and obviously what I found was, let's see, I can't tell you who was there, I can tell you who wasn't there. All right, and,
There were some new faces though.
Yeah, 3.
but, the ones that who continue to claim that there's no transparency, no information out there, weren't there?
That's usually the way it works.
Yeah, it'll be repeated as a virtual event, Thursday evening at 7, basically running through the same information.
Thursday, is everything going on Thursday? They got like 15 things going on. That's enough.
A busy day. And all of this is also on the website. We'll be placing all the information on the website so people can go at their leisure. We're creating some videos on each district and those will be on the website. So there'll be lots of opportunities for people to get information. And we'll try to promote that as an option for people.
Yeah, that's good.
Have administrators report.
A few items. First off, the various RFPs, request for proposals that are out on the street, so to speak. Expecting responses from potential recruiting firms to help with my replacement. Those are due October 1st, and potential interviews the 2nd and 3rd, with the goal of having a recommendation to you at your next meeting. Operational audits, I now received all 3, I've received 3 proposals. Need to do some follow-up on those proposals, so get a recommendation back to you. The fundraiser for the senior center project, those are due the 7th of October. I know we have one strong interest, but hopefully we'll have a couple more also materialize. We don't have it out on the street yet, but hopefully in the next couple, 3 weeks, we'll get the designer selection, as an architect, basically, for the expansion plans for the Mason building. So hopefully that will be going up soon as well. Construction work continues, the focus on Pleasant Street and Forest Street. Some concerns, when we do a bypass, we have to do the bypass to provide an alternative flow for water as the main pipe is repaired, or in this case, relined. That's the same drinking water that everyone receives. It's no different. And those bypass lines are fully disinfected and tested before they are brought online. That all has to happen. Now, sometimes when those are hooked up, there has been some disturbance in the pipe, different pressure, et cetera. So people may have some discolored water. And the best way to clear it out is to run the cold faucet for 5-10 minutes. Sometimes not that long, but it usually will clear up by just running it for a short amount of time. We've had some concerns about that. And we'll again, try to get the word out that that's the case.
Do we know how long people are gonna be on temporary water for?
Up to 2 months. Hopefully a little shorter.
Trees. Water sitting up there.
Some staff updates I provided for you, just sort of FYI. And Kathy already mentioned the website redesign. Obviously, updating content is an ongoing effort. Continue to work on that. The police department had their reaccreditation visitation from the creditors, and that went very well. Couple minor issues involving the training of our parking enforcement officers, nothing that is not easily fixed. So we expect to receive accreditation for another 3-year period, which is a good accomplishment for the department. So that's good news. So with that, I wrap up.
Anything else that you want to talk about off? No, we don't. Is there another motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
They-
Aye.
Hey, good.
Right, I have a question.